Right, we are live. Is that the right angle for this? Phone's going to fall off. Okay, let's try this again. Always some kind of technical issue with this fucking going live business. Right. I refuse to end the stream. If you're wondering why I have such a hard... There we go. So if you're wondering why I have such a hard time with this, I'll tell you. I have a Samsung Fold, which I think is incredible. But because it's a funny shape, it doesn't sit in the cradle of these stands very well. And of course, it keeps falling and it gets broken. Right, I think we're okay. Could have been worse. On TikTok the other day, I had people knocking at the door and I had to fucking go back and forth 3 separate times. Right, what we're going to cover today, kind of inspired by one of my clients, which I'm going to talk about because it will give some context, because he is almost, he's in his late 50s and we've been working together for the best part of a year. So that will help you kind of relate this to you. But I'm going to kind of use the story that I told him about my metabolism in relation to my wife's metabolism to explain why sometimes fat loss can be harder for some people. And it really can. And I am one of them. I've said it a lot of times, and I know people might not believe me. I don't build muscle. I wouldn't say, but I definitely don't build muscle easily. I break my back pretty much every session I go in the gym, and have done for 20 years, although more so in the last maybe 10, when I learned to train probably a bit better. Is that the right angle? It's really annoying me, this. The problem is with people like me, you might be the same, is that, like a lot of things, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and little things like camera angle really bug me. But then I don't really, that's better. Yeah, so what I was saying, muscle building is challenging for me, but fat loss is relatively challenging. I'm going to explain what I mean by that. I'm at the end-ish of my diet now. Quite frankly, if I was just an average dude who just wanted to look good, I could stop. I probably could have stopped, don't know, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. I've got to get rid of this last bit on my stomach, the genuine stubborn fat, which I'm not going to talk about that now because I want to do another video on this. But let me put it into perspective with the case study of my client, Peter. Shout out to Peter. Been working with him for the best part of a year. Has lost a lot of fat and has built a lot of muscle. So clearly someone who builds muscle easily. He's 6'3" or 6'4". He's a big dude. And even though he's in his late 50s, we had a coaching call today and he is doing 200 kilo RDLs that started off at 80. So he's building muscle, but he's kind of frustrated with the body fat not coming down as consistently now. Not easy. He's an executive. He has lots of client lunches, lots of trips, and obviously a family life. So you have to take that into consideration. But one of the things he said was, let me get the comments on. One of the things he said was a couple of times, and he has said a few times to me, he's like, I'm 6'4". I'm 115 kilos. I'm exercising. I'm lifting weights. I'm kind of really working hard, which he is. Why is the fat not going? Why do my calories have to be so low? And obviously I can have empathy for him because my calories are low. And that is why it will lead me to talking about my wife's calories, because it will come around full circle and you'll be like, okay, that makes sense. So keep Peter in mind. Building muscle well, lost fat, but probably needs to lose another 10 kilos. Doesn't want to have a 6-pack. Another 10 kilos would really do the trick. His arms are pretty lean, back's pretty lean, legs are lean like most men's. 10 kilos kind of from his midsection and chest would be, he would look trim, but would be sustainable. So keep that in mind. I am now at the end of my diet. And I've said to my wife many times, this is the first time since I met her that I've dieted this aggressively. For reasons I've talked about. We had COVID, then I got injured, then I hurt my shoulder, I tore my bicep. And basically I spent a lot of time over the last few years really just rehabbing myself and trying not to lose any muscle. I don't really want to diet down. You don't really want to diet to be really lean if you can't train hard, because you will lose muscle. So I kind of like kept my body fat a little bit higher and just, fixed myself, which has been a really slow process. My rotator cuff took well over 2 years to really be better. A bicep that gets torn obviously takes time. I've had some hip issues. So so she hasn't seen me diet down properly. But I've talked about when I did my bodybuilding competition, how I ended up doing very low calories. Cardio ended up at the end at 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. So that's 12 hours of cardio. And then I said to her that it was really tough. I had to basically starve myself. When you do bodybuilding competitions, it is really controlled starvation. And I don't think she ever really believed me. Now though, she's seeing me do it in real life, in real time. And she was like, the other day, she was like, I'm having some days where I'm eating 1,200 calories. And you have to remember, this is really important. I am at the very end of a diet. My metabolism always adapts, which I'm going to come back to. But she was like, you're eating 1,200 calories some days, and on some days doing 15. I'm doing 1,500 every day. I'm doing 0 cardio. You're doing 4 sessions a week on the cross trainer. I'm averaging about 3,000 or 4,000 steps a day. You're averaging 16,000 steps a day. So you're doing more exercise than me by a long way. You are eating fewer calories than me. And yet you are 50% heavier than me. She's 8 stone 5. I'm 12 stone 5. Think about that. And also, we'll have to say that I train typically 1 extra day in the gym with weights. And I don't think it's rude to say that I actually train much harder than her, because quite frankly, I don't think she really cares as much as me. And because of her genetics, she doesn't actually really need to. So you've got a female that is 5'1", 8.5 stone, barely any steps, no cardio, just going into the gym, not logging anything, not trying to beat the personal best, just basically winging it and enjoying it, who is eating more calories than me and seeing better progress at this point. And there are a couple of reasons why that is, and I'm going to explain why that's important. The reason why is when you start to diet, you get a small reduction in metabolic rate. Some will be big, it will vary. Some of the reduction in metabolic rate can be down to you moving less. I don't think that's the case with me. You see me doing these lives on this walking pad. I'm doing 16,000 steps. Yesterday I built some cupboards. I'm doing school runs. I'm not just lounging around. When I did my bodybuilding competition, I did actually get to the point where I didn't move much at all. So I think my natural movement it's gone up. It hasn't declined. So what happens every time I diet is that my body adapts very quickly. And what I mean by that is the calorie deficit causes my metabolic rate to drop quickly and more aggressively than most people. I sometimes get clients who will send their diet, set their cardio, create their plan on day 1, and they might lose quite a lot of weight and nothing changes for 3 months. I had one guy that we barely changed anything for 16 weeks. and he just kept losing weight. That'd be a great example of someone who you create the calorie deficit, and over the weeks it doesn't change. Whereas mine goes like this. And even when I did my competition, I used a very well-known, knowledgeable bodybuilding coach, like in bodybuilding, a famous coach in bodybuilding, who has been coaching for like 30 years, training for 40. And I remember him changing my diet one week, nothing happened. The next week, nothing happened. And then about midweek, on the third week, I remember saying, nothing's happening. And him just being like, right, we need to just do something more aggressive. And the calories came down quite quickly. And then I started to see progress. Why is this important to you? Why is this important to my client, Peter? Well, he's got this notion, he's got this idea in his head that because of his weight or his height or his activity level, he shouldn't have to drop his food any lower to continue seeing progress. And quite frankly, sometimes it isn't true. Out of interest, yesterday I went into Chat GPT. I know it can be a little bit off, but what I like about it is you can put all your information in, it will do all the calculations. So I put in my weight, my height, my body fat percentage, my age, the steps I do, the cardio, the heart rate that I am at. I put that for now, and I did it for when I did my bodybuilding competition. Gave all of the information. And it came back and said, based on all of that information right now, your weight, your activity, your body fat, the muscle, everything, that your body should need about 5,000 calories. And yet I'm only eating 1,200 to 1,500, depending on the day. Does anyone think I am in a deficit of 3,000 calories? I would waste away. What that shows is the mathematics doesn't add up. And the reason why it doesn't add up for me is because over the course of losing 16 kilos, my metabolism has dropped. My wife is just a good example of someone who, she stays very lean. When she eats carbohydrates, she gets pumped up. She doesn't ever look fat. It's like she just lifts weights and her muscles explode. She's just genetically very lucky. And there are going to be men like that, regardless of age. So one of the things I had to say to Peter was, and it can be quite hard to say this to someone, but as a coach, I have to say it, because he was like, I'm doing the exercise, doing the steps, I'm tracking all my food, even on business dinners and stuff. I'm kind of making sensible choices. I'm basically doing everything right. And I know he is, because I can see it. I can see his food in his MyFitnessPal, because it comes to my app. I can see his training because he sends me videos of it. I can see the changes in his body shapes. I know he's working hard. So I know he's doing what he said he's doing. So sometimes it can be quite hard to go back to clients and say, yeah, you need to eat less. For them to know that as well, to be like, shit, like this is already quite hard. Like I'm already struggling to sometimes stick to it because of traveling and stuff. And I don't say that to put anyone off. Most people won't be like that. Really, the point of this live is to say that losing weight, especially if you've been overweight for many years, like he said, like a lot of the body fat he's got, it's probably been there for 20, 25 years. You know, he's been slowly gaining weight since his mid-20s, now in his late 50s. It's going to be stubborn, and it's going to take time to lose it sometimes. And sometimes you're going to have to push a little bit harder than you believe or think. Now, we had a really good coaching call. We looked over his plans, and I noticed some places that we could easily make changes that will benefit his progress, but won't overly impact his life. And at the end of the day, Peter is a good example. Like, he's not, I have to say this, he's not morbidly obese or obese. He's in really good shape now. We've been working really hard for a year, but he just wants his stomach to be a little bit more trim. And a lot of you guys will get to that point where the rest of your body is quite lean, quite muscular, and the stomach might just sit there. I'm the same now. Like my shoulders, you can see veins in them. You can see veins in my thighs. You can see the top of my abs, but around the belly button, still quite flabby, quite frankly. Well, from the perspective of doing a photo shoot, so everything's relative. It is. So I understand exactly how he feels. And sometimes you just got to dig deep and work a little bit harder. But it's better to understand that. Why? Because if you don't understand that, if you're the guy who maybe goes on a Google calculator and it says that, you know, you're walking the dog, you say, or you might even use Chat GPT. You say, oh, I'm walking the dog. I'm lifting weights 3 times a week. This is how much I weigh. How many calories do I need to lose body fat? It might come back with like 2,500, but you might only need 1,700. And it is a bit of a, it's a tough pill to swallow, unfortunately. But I feel like sometimes it's best to understand how things work so that you can kind of prepare yourself. So with Peter, for example, we're going to do a diet break. He's going on holiday tonight for 6 nights, and then he's going to come back. So we're going to basically do a diet break for about 10 days, which he hasn't done for a while. It's another reason why metabolism can drop. So if we think about some of the things we can do, here's some of the things we're going to do with Peter. So you can think about this. A diet break will give your metabolic rate a spike, a little bit of a boost. It feels counterintuitive, but sometimes it's better to take a 1 to 2 week break. I would go with 2 weeks, typically, at least 10 days. Sometimes it's better to take a 10 to 2 week break to then see progress than it is to spend weeks and weeks making none, especially if you're starting to get a bit mentally burnt out. So for Peter, he can have a break on holiday. He can eat a bit more food. Mentally, that's going to be nice for him. When he comes back, we're going to change the diet a little bit. Obviously, there's Christmas and stuff, so it will slow it down a little bit. And we've kind of said, can we get a bit of progress in December? If not, we'll maintain. And then in January, we can hit it hard once the kind of Christmas period is over. Another thing we're going to do, if we're talking about strictly fat loss and it comes down to numbers, how many calories can you eat? Well, do you eat? How many calories do you burn? And we're trying to make an energy deficit. One of the things I'm going to do with him is reduce the amount of exercises or sets he is doing when he lifts, because we can now assume that he probably won't build any muscle. So there's no point trying to build muscle. So when you're trying to maintain muscle, you can do a little bit less. He has an hour for the gym. He's using the hour pretty much for weight training when there probably isn't any need to do so. So what we're going to do, change the training plan so that he maintains muscle, and that training session is going to be optimized so that it only takes 35 to 40 minutes. That allows him to get some cardio done at the end of the session. That cardio session will burn about 150 to 200 calories. He's also admitted that he actually could increase his step count. He sits a lot. He said, actually, throughout the day, I could walk a little bit. He could get a walking pad. So we're going to try and get his step count up by 3,000. Again, that'll burn another 100 or so calories, maybe more. What have I burnt on this? Yeah, a decent amount. So there's 300 calories or so. All that's going to, and what that is going to do is it's going to increase the calorie deficit, but it shouldn't really impact his life because he's doing the same amount of time in the gym. The walking he's going to do in just little bursts, you know, it's not going to be, he's just going to basically get up every hour from the desk and walk for 10 minutes. You know, 5-10 minutes will add up if you do it 6 or 7 times. It's 30 minutes to an hour of walking. It's just getting into the habit of doing it. And then we're just going to look at the diet and see if there's anything we can change in terms of, can I maximize the calories he's eating? So I'm going to look through his food choices, see if there's anything we can change to make the diet more filling. Maybe see if if any bad habits have crept in. And that should do the trick. Again, it's about being smart and it's about not making excuses. But that's the reason why I talk about my metabolism versus my wife's. It's a really good example of where you could be like, what the hell? It literally makes no sense. 0 sense. Even though I've lost quite a lot of body fat and I've been dieting for a while, the reduction in metabolic rate normally isn't as big as I have seen. But there's always going to be outliers. Sometimes good, sometimes it's a good outlier, sometimes it's a bad. And when people say they have a slow metabolism, you can have a metabolism that does slow down more so when you start to diet. In the same way as some people, when they start to diet, they naturally start to move less. In the same way as those people that often can eat what they want, often move more when they're given more food. And in one study I saw, if I remember rightly, there was one poor woman who, when she ate more food, she moved less. So she, of course, gained more weight than everyone else. I remember like hearing a podcast about it and then being like, that poor woman. Everyone else ate more food, they had more energy, and their natural movement throughout the day increased. And when we talk about movement, we talk about, hand movement, fidgeting, just walking about, and like that typically should go up if you've got more energy. When you diet, for some people, it goes rock bottom, which is why tracking your steps is important. But this one poor woman, they fed her up and she got lazier. So she was eating more food, burning fewer calories, and therefore the amount of calories over what she needed increased, and she gained more weight. It's a funny thing, metabolism. Hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully it makes you realize, again, I don't want this to be like something where people think, oh, it's disheartening. If it's disheartening, then welcome to the real world. Like, some of us have to walk crazy amounts to get leaner. Some of us can starve ourselves, feel like we starve ourselves and not get as much progress. And then you got people like my wife sitting there eating more food than you, doing 0 cardio and changing in the mirror every single week. It's just, that's life. Hopefully that's helpful. Now, if you'd like some help with that, because a lot of the time, getting stubborn belly fat off is the challenge. I always feel like with a lot of you guys, and I'm not talking about men who struggle to lose weight initially, I'm talking about the guys who get into the habit, start doing the cardio, start training, lose weight, and they feel good. And then they get stuck. Sometimes that's about accountability and strategy. Are you being held accountable to just step it up a little bit? And are you doing the things that you can do to protect your metabolism, like refeeds and diet breaks and high carb days? And are you having enough protein? All these things that they matter the leaner you want to get. If you need to lose 150 pounds, if you need to lose 4, 5, 6 stone, not a lot really matters apart from really about calorie control. You don't even really need as much protein at that point. But if you are on the other end, you are trim, but you want to be a little bit more lean around the stomach, how you do it matters. So if you'd like some help with that, like my client Peter has, we jumped on a coaching call today. We went through the struggles, we looked at the options, and now I'm just going to sit and write him a plan and he knows what to do once he's come back from his holiday. If you'd like that similar kind of help, support, accountability, and coaching, and you are not waiting until January to do it, send me a message with the word wife. I'll definitely know where you've come from then, and we'll have a chat and go from there. Right, that is a kilometer, one of about 8 that I need to do. Enjoy the rest of your day. I won't be on at the weekend because tomorrow I'll be doing my refeed, so I'll be too busy eating and doing check-ins with the clients. I might come back on Sunday, but probably Monday, to be honest. See you later.